everybody, Mr. Wonderful here with another episode of Ask Mr. Wonderful. You know, I gotta be honest with you, it's my favorite show. I love it because it's your questions that make it happen. And today, we're gonna take a little drive down Tech Alley with an amazing guy who's gonna be really useful in answering some of these questions. So, let's not waste any time. We're gonna jump right into it. Everybody meet Sam Sheffer.
Hello.
That's it? That's all you got?
I'm waiting for you, Kevin. You're driving the bus here.
I got it. I want to know, Sam, where you came from. Everybody does. What makes you special in the tech world? How'd you get these followers? What's the story on your journey into YouTube? And why do you love tech so much? Those are multiple questions. Be fast on your feet when you're working with me.
All right, give me like 2 minutes. I'm from New Jersey, born and raised. I come from a relatively big family. I've got an older brother and 2 younger brothers. So growing up, we had video games in the house, computers. I remember burning CDs, using Napster early on, Kazaa, LimeWire, all of those things.
Using Napster illegally, shame on you.
That's right. And just being really on the internet in the sort of early and late 90s. And I remember getting on Twitter relatively early, and I somehow landed a job at a website called Engadget when I was 19 years old at Rutgers. And I worked at Engadget for 2 years remotely. And then all the editors left Engadget to start a new website called The Verge in 2011. And I was a team of 1 running social media for The Verge.
That's very early on in the social media game.
Yeah. It's been interesting to watch the last decade of I remember there was a time where people thought Twitter was not going to last, and now Twitter is one of the most important platforms of our life. And then from The Verge, I started dabbling in video a little bit. My dad actually used to have camcorders around the house all the time, so I've been exposed to cameras basically my whole life. And then really when I was at The Verge, I kind of just volunteered myself. We did a daily tech news show called 90 Seconds on The Verge. And every day I would volunteer to film the show because I love tech news.
And you were shooting on what? Old videotape?
Yeah, right. We were shooting on, I think, Canon C100s. I personally was never really behind the camera. I was always in front of the camera, which was nice. And then from The Verge, I worked at Mashable. I was there from 2015 to 2017. I ran our Snapchat Discover channel. So we had a tech-focused Snapchat. It was like a Snapchat-only show. And that was kind of crazy because we'd make a dozen pieces of content every day, Kevin, and then they would disappear after 24 hours, 7 days a week for a long time.
But that was the format. You knew where you were going to do it that way. I get it. But you've somehow found a way to stay engaged with people that want to hear what you've got.
Definitely. And it's interesting. I don't really consider myself like huge. Like I have friends with literally millions of followers on Instagram and Twitter and tens of millions on YouTube. And I think that people that follow me are sort of in it for the long journey, where some of my audience knows me from when I was literally 21, 22 years old working at Engadget and The Verge. Some people only know me from YouTube. But
would you consider yourself, though, a social media entrepreneur? Because you're trying to use these platforms in a way that you can monetize them and you can eat.
Yeah.
And, you know, in some ways, if you go back just 20 years, everybody wanted to be a rock star. Now everybody wants to be a YouTuber. And you think about the same desire. Not everybody makes it. What do you think differentiates? And let's call the hurdle. It's not easy to get 50,000 subs or subscribers. It's not easy to get 100,000. It's nearly impossible to get 1 million. And that's what it takes over time to live off YouTube and have a successful entrepreneurial business.
That's right. What
differentiates the winners from the losers? Let's just take one platform. Let's just go YouTube for a minute here, because we're on this platform right now. How is it determined who gets the light to shine on them and the rest stay in the darkness?
I think there's a couple of facets that go into this. Consistency is really, really important.
What does that mean when you say consistency?
That means if
a timed release every week. Does it mean the quality every week?
Yes, I think it's a combination of just upload a damn video to YouTube and continue to upload videos to YouTube, where, you know,
huge time commitment for anybody that wants to go down that journey.
Yes, and I think that part of it mentally, you need to go into it with, you know, like obviously if you're trying to make a business out of it, that's a great angle, but you need to find enjoyment out of it. If it starts to feel like a burden on you and you...
Isn't that the dream of YouTube, where you can find a passion, a topic matter you love, like Tech for You, and all of a sudden get a following, just like a band has a following. In the old days, you have to sell albums to your band, fans. And here you are building up a franchise of people that care about, give a damn what you think.
Yes.
Number two, trust what you say, and consistently get content from you in a quality they're used to. That sounds like the magic to make it work.
So I have a very specific good anecdote for you. So I publish not as often as I should.
And what is that? What's the frequency?
At this point, Kevin, I would say it's like, I try to hit once a week, but realistically it's like twice a month. But I've very much like upped the quality, where if you go back for my older videos, audio is not as good. I used to only shoot in 1080, now I only shoot in 4K, and it really makes a difference. But the consistency aspect, I remember early 2019, I was just going super hard on YouTube, just like getting really consistent. It's nice to have, like, when you have like 2 in the hopper, 3 in the hopper, where you're like ahead of schedule, where you have 2 videos ready to go with a bow on them and you can publish them whenever you want.
That's a dream if you can do that.
That is, and I basically I work with one of my younger brothers who's also my roommate. He quit his job in banking to help me make YouTube videos.
And is he eating protein?
He is. He definitely makes protein shakes once in a while, but no, we had a really good 2019. There was one video. The whole point I'm making, Kevin, it usually just takes one single video that could really put you on the map. So I made a video called Instagram Story Hacks, 5 things you probably didn't know you can do. And Instagram is just so hot, where there's so many people just searching on YouTube, because YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, second to Google. Enough people are searching Instagram story tricks, Instagram story hacks, so I hit it good with SEO in the title and the tags. And it got like 30 or 40,000 views in like 2 or 3 days. So I was like, all right, cool. I had like, I don't know, 180,000 subscribers. In 1 week, it just shot up in the YouTube algorithm. That video has 5.5 million views, and I've gained 49,000 subscribers from a single video.
So there is a music analogy to that. It takes one big hit to get your band on the map, and then people want to listen to what else you've got.
That's right.
Great analogy to YouTube. Let's jump into some questions, because I got a whole ton of questions. They're tech-oriented. You're going to be the right guy to co-author these answers with me, which is what I love to do in collaborations. We have a lot of fun. So let's listen to what these people are asking and think about how we can help them advance their cause, because everybody asks these questions for a reason. They're trying to do something better, faster, a business, an entrepreneur, decide if they want to actually get into something in terms of a new idea in tech, and everything in tech has been done before, it seems, until the next big idea comes along. So let's start with this. This is from Charlie. Charlie, what do you got for us?
Hey, Mr. Wonderful. We're rapidly entering the age of autonomous cars. Do you think car ownership will continue to be a priority for most? Or do you see people preferring to use them as needed via a subscription service?
That's a great question.
That is a great question.
There's a lot, he's insinuating a lot. What he's basically saying is, if everybody's willing to jump in an autopiloted car, an autonomous car, why should you own it? So let's start with you. What do you think about this question? Because it has a lot of implications on how you would invest in car companies, a la Tesla, which is a hot stock right now. What do you think? What's the answer to Charlie's question?
There's a lot to unpack here. First of all, I'm extremely bullish on Tesla. Elon has now completed part 1 of his master plan. I think that I am personally a little bit in my own bubble, because I've lived in Manhattan for about 7 years now, and I haven't, really owned.
Those are the Manhattan police sirens you hear out there, right?
Constantly there's noise here. So like my use for a car, I rode here on an electric longboard. My use for a car is effectively zero right now. Like I did pre-order a Cybertruck, because I don't know where I'm going to be when that thing ships in 2 or 3 years. But I think that in terms of autonomous vehicles, we are definitely, and I hope, going toward a future where cars drive themselves. I make this analogy with sort of naysayers that are like, the cars can be hacked and this and that. And I say, when you pick up your phone to call your mom or your cousin or your boss, and you send a text message or an email, you're not worried about someone intercepting that call. You're not worried about something getting hacked. Yes, there is a chance that something catastrophic could happen, but I think traffic deaths in the U.S. alone in 2017 or 2018 was like upwards of 35,000.
You think those will go way down once cars are watching themselves?
Yes, I think so.
Autonomous driving has the promise of maybe making it safer. I agree with that.
Do you own and operate an electric vehicle?
I do. And I'll tell you, my answer to this question comes from experience.
Yes.
in a rather different way. My son's an electrical engineer. In his third year, decides to take an internship at Tesla. We're sitting at the kitchen table. He gets invited. He accepts. He's really interested because he was on the car team at his college. And a lot of people don't know this. Every cohort, electrical engineers, race F1 Formula cars they build from scratch against each other. MIT generally would beat everybody. But in this particular Nebraska race, Trevor, who was the captain of the team, beat MIT. Now, of course, at all these races, the Tesla guys and the BMW guys and the Audi guys and the Ford guys are running around meeting these teams. So his team did very well. He's on sort of on the battery management side. He got an internship. But here's the story. We're sitting at the kitchen table. I'm looking over at my screen because I manage, I'm in the financial services industry with ETFs. And I'm looking over and Tesla's down 13% because they missed a quarter or an analyst said to short the stock or whatever. I said to Trevor, this company looks like a dog. I mean, this thing is down so much. He said, Dad, nobody understands this company. This is not a car company. It's a data company. It has the highest resolution of miles driven on Earth. Every time a Tesla drives, it reports back to HQ and makes the resolution of that road even clearer for future autonomous driving. And I said, what does that mean, Trevor? Should I not think of this as a car company? He said, no. Think about it as a data company with extremely high resolution data, and you should own some. So I bought some stock. Do you know this is the highest return on any stock I own? Because that was the low that day, just by happen chance, and I'm up like, 90%. And the car company barely makes any money. This is why I always listen to people that know more about something than I do. And Trevor clearly understood that he had a different vision for what Tesla was. He loved working there. But to me, that is the future. And boy, am I glad I own that stock. And to Elon, who I saw recently out in LA, I thanked him. I said, listen, Elon, all I know about you is you've made me money.
And that's a good guy.
It is great. But let's move on. I think you've said it. We're both pretty positive on that. Thank you for your question, Charlie. I love the randomness of these questions. You just never know.
Tech is pretty broad these days, I'd say.
Michelle is asking this question.
Hello, Mr. Wonderful. I have a question for you that if you had $30,000 in the bank stored up from savings that you have as a student working, would you invest it all, or would you do the 10% rule and invest only 10% of it and only invest 10% for income at a time? Should I save it for my graduate school or invest it?
Sam, tough question. $30,000 for a student. He's not even in debt, but he's going to go into debt if he goes post-secondary college, right?
Man, that is a really tough question to answer. You take it first. I want to hear what you have to say
I'll tell
first.
you, it's very simple for me. I hate debt. Michelle, I hate debt. I can't stand debt. If you have $30,000, invest it in yourself in college, but don't go into debt. While you're in college, do what I did, get a job at night. I was slinging beer and I worked as a chef just so I never got into debt in college. I hate debt, but I would not invest it until you're finished your journey. And I look at it this way. You should make a decision. If you're going to take $30,000 that are in the bank right now, you better invest in a degree that makes sense in terms of monetizing it. And I've said this many times. I get criticized for it all the time. The top three for me: engineering number one, engineering number two, and engineering number three. And if you want a fourth choice, go with engineering. Because if you have the aptitude to do that, the chances you won't be employed are practically zero, and you'll make lots of money. Everything else, I don't know. It's hard to say. What do you think, Sam?
This might sound a little crazy, but $30,000 is not that much in the grand scheme of things. Like, if you
It is if you don't have it.
Yes, but if this person's thinking in sort of 10 years from now, hopefully they're going to have much more than 30,000.
Well, it should make 7% a year if it's invested in the market. The question is, should you go in debt instead of using that to invest in your own education? And here's another further question. If you don't really believe in your education that you would invest in it, what the hell are you doing it for?
That's right. I think Michel should take it upon himself to, ask himself, what does he really want? If he's okay with investing the $30,000 into himself, like you said, to pursue the education, then hopefully he'll be able to make a ton more money that he can recoup that debt if need be.
Are you okay with, let's say you had 3 kids and they all want to do history and the liberal arts and pursue music, and you're still paying for all of their lives? Well, I mean, this is a very touchy question.
Yeah.
People feel, I'm not against the arts at all, but you have to have a plan that you can actually separate from your parents by the time you're 18 and make it on your own.
Yeah.
What's the strategy?
What's funny is, this is just speaking solely from my perspective.
You found a way.
I really didn't have a plan, frankly.
Is your father still writing you a check every week?
No. I haven't really taken money from they pay for my phone bill, and that's literally it. I've been paying rent for, probably 7 years now.
So you're financially independent?
Oh, yes, super financially independent. Yeah.
It's on your mind every week. You're thinking about, how do I live my life in a way that I can afford it?
Well, how can I live my life in a way? This is going to sound a little bit crazy, but we're talking here. Why not? I think money is super fascinating, especially in this future that we live in, because everyone in the universe is bound by money, but you really don't need $100 million to find inner peace with yourself. I have a moderately good-sized apartment in the East Village in Manhattan. I'm able to buy my meals going out. I'm not a multi-gazillionaire, but I'm also not scavenging for pennies and nickels here. I've worked really hard for the past 10 years, but I think it's important to take a look at what you want. How are you able to wake up every morning and say, I'm gonna go work, and for me it's for myself, and be able to save money and just not go crazy about where's my next dollar coming from.
But you're not under stress that many people are, that they don't know where next month's rent is coming from.
That's right.
That puts tremendous stress on you physically. Always being in uncertainty and not knowing, or being in so much debt that you might face personal bankruptcy, which changes your life forever.
That's right.
And hurts you in many ways in the future. I think this issue is an interesting one, because you sound like you're a happy guy. You found a medium where you're not starving, and you're happy in what you've built for yourself, and you're able to pay for yourself.
That's right.
And so I think that's what everybody strives for. And so in regard to Michel's $30,000, he's making a decision about launching himself to get to where you are eventually.
Yeah.
And he may start with that in the bank, or he may decide to invest it in college, or in master's degree or something like that. But I always tell people all the time, when you're looking at $30,000 you've saved hard, and you're going to invest in education, you better make it something you can get back.
That's right.
And so whatever makes you happy and actually is something that you're good at, maybe you'll get them employed in it, because not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. But I love that question. And it was,
I want to add one more thing also.
Please do.
Patience. I mean, this person, if they're still undergrad, 19, 20, 21 years old, that $30,000, if they go pursue, get a master's degree in engineering or something, they're looking at a $100,000 salary in their first year, possibly.
But a master's degree in engineering is going to cost 60 to 80 grand, including.
That's right.
It ain't cheap.
So patience, right? You hit pause on your life and then press play when you're 25, 26 after you've been working for 4 or 5 years.
That makes the assumption you've decided this career path will get me a job, which is something you got to think about if you're going to part with $30,000. That's all I say to people. Think about it. I mean, just think about it. I get the high school journey, but when you go in and you start paying for college, that's an investment in yourself. Make it worth it. Going to college and just blowing your brains out partying is a real waste of dough if there's no outcome on the other end, which is the mistake I made when I went to college. And my dad said, you're going to starve to death. You better go back and get a master's in business, because you are going to just have no income.
And that's what you did.
Yeah, I was a shuffleboard expert, and I did arts, and it's a long story. I made my money hustling shuffleboard against engineers who all got jobs, and I was still at the shuffleboard table. That's exactly what happened. Here's one from Luke.
What's the one thing that someone should invest in if they want to improve their appearance but don't have unlimited funds?
Interesting. Luke is asking, what's the one thing someone should invest in to improve their appearance? So he's making an assumption about how important appearance is, but they don't have a lot of money. What do you think that is?
Could we unpack this here for a second?
Yeah, but it's an interesting question.
Is appearance a haircut? Is it your your apparel? Is it
I think intrinsic in Luke's question is the idea that somehow your appearance,
your image,
your brand, your karma, what other people think about you when they first see you, which happens every day. People see you for the first time all over the place.
It's scary.
It's true though. And so I think people should consider their brand, their image, the way they look. And they can decide to look different ways for different groups. But I'll give you an example. When I go to meet with money, when I'm in financial services talking about O shares, ETFs, I wear a crisp suit, a white shirt, a tie, shiny shoes, because that's what they expect to see. Yes. When I'm sitting with you here right now having a great time, I'm selling my own merch, by the way, a time to promote this. When I'm here pitching my own merch, coldhardmerch.com, very exclusive shirt. I just love this piece, by the way. I think we have a limited number, but you'll learn more about it later. But I'm always selling. What can you say? But my point is, I want to feel comfortable talking with you. And you're not wearing a suit, so why should I? And we understand each other on this thing. So at the end of the day, what's your answer to Luke? What can you do? You don't have a lot of dough, but you want to change your image. What's the plan? Tough question, eh?
Really tough question. I would say authenticity. Like, be comfortable with yourself. You can look good in anything. You could also look bad in anything. If you get a weird haircut and you don't feel comfortable in it, it's going to sort of like seep through, and people are going to be able to sense that you're uncomfortable in literally your own skin. I also think good sleep is vastly underrated. There's just like this notion,
I like that one.
There's this notion of work. I mean, like, you work jobs through college, staying up all night. Like, it's great and it makes money, but like, quality sleep is vastly underrated. So, Luke, if you're not getting a good night's sleep, I think you should personally invest in a really good night's sleep, and it'll just make you sort of feel better overall, and then just be comfortable in your own skin.
I'm going to give you a little data that I learned a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
I got hired to be a keynote speaker to a group of HR executives, human resource executives, worked for large corporations. And when we were doing the breakout after the keynote, maybe I had 15 of them in a room, no press, just open dialogue. And I asked them a question, because in these giant companies, they write policy books about appearance, about apparel, about protocol in HR. Mm-hmm. But I asked them, because I had a discussion with my daughter earlier that day about tattoos and inking yourself, because everybody's doing it these days. So I said to them, I'd like to get an answer. I'm not recording anything. I'm not taping anything. When a candidate comes in for a job, fantastic resume, and they have ink on their face, they've got a tattoo on their face or their neck, or it's exposed in a way on their head, does that in any way change your perception of them for the job? Remember, nobody's recording. It was a really long, uncomfortable silence. But to a T, every one of them said, yeah, that freaks me out. I worry about how the messaging is to our customers, to other employees. If they're uncomfortable, there's a red lightning bolt across their forehead or imagery up the side of their neck. And so I'm telling people, and I'm not endorsing either way, but if you're going to ink yourself in your face and you're going into, and you want to pursue a path with a large company, and by the way, a lot of these were tech HR guys with companies that that you want to get a job at. They're not cool with it. What do you think about that?
Face tattoos exist in this really sort of like singular category of like, it gives off like, I don't know. I also, like, on the one hand...
Does it give off a rebel without a cause vibe? Does it give,
yes.
I don't give a fuck what you think vibe?
Yes. I mean, to permanently inks, look, nothing against people that tattoo themselves on their neck, on their hands, on their face. But it just like, it sends a message, it sends this...
But is it a good message for your career? This is the question we're trying to answer here.
If they're qualified, it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter. Do you think it does?
I am not a hiring manager, Kevin, but I think if I were to...
Would you risk it? Because there's always two candidates. There's always two resumes. There's always one. In our case, we're discussing here.
I would, because you could always fire them if they're not performing.
Interesting answer. So you support that rebel nature because maybe what matters is their ability to execute.
Maybe they're a brilliant mind.
But I think, my answer is, I think they're selected against in a way that's not fair, but it happens anyways. So I just want the viewership to understand there's a risk to this. It's not free, and if you do it, you're taking, at least for some people, you're telling them something they don't want to hear. That's what I'm saying.
I have no tattoos. If I were
Either do I, but I have nothing against them. I have no problem with it. We have lots, in my companies, everybody's got tattoos. I don't give a shit, but I'm trying to give advice to people that are trying to advance their careers in some amazing companies that I know they want to work at. And these HR guys were clear. They were clear.
So Luke, no face tats.
No face tats, that's the first thing. Luke, that's good. Let's move on. All right, Michelle, what do you got for us, Michelle?
Hi, Mr. Wonderful. What do you think of the hype around 5G? Do you think it'll revolutionize our homes, jobs, and the way we travel? Or do you think it's largely just marketing hype?
Sam, honey, sweetie, poopsie baby, 5G, that's right up your alley.
Okay.
What are you thinking on 5G?
Okay,
Marketing hype or a real benefit?
Both. Story time. Okay. When I was at Rutgers, I remember the iPhone 5 came out. Rutgers University is in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and it was one of the first cities to light up 4G LTE. LTE is long-term evolution. It kind of got bundled, like 4G was the fourth generation of wireless tech for smartphones, and then like branding sort of blended like 4G LTE. It's the same thing.
Does anybody even understand what the hell that means?
Nope. It just
Consumer
means
side?
how fast can you scroll through Instagram without waiting for the video to buffer, basically.
That's if you understand what that is.
Sure.
Okay.
It's how fast are you basically pulling data from towers, which are getting data from satellites. When I was at Rutgers, and I remember vividly, I would do speed tests on my iPhone 5 or 5S, whichever one had LTE first. I think it was the 5. And I was getting like 50 or 60 down, which is pretty good speeds, even by today's standards. This is literally 2009, 2010.
There's a lot less pressure on the network at that time.
That's exactly what I was going to get at. There was no one else that had an iPhone with LTE.
Now every guy and their dog is putting pressure on the network.
That is right. So in the beginning days, LTE was fantastic. I remember just being obsessed with doing speed tests. I was getting sometimes over 100 down, like in a moving car, and I was like, this is awesome. This is like faster than my Wi-Fi at home. This is 10 years ago. Now, the networks are so congested that no matter where, like we are in New York City, one of the most densely populated cities in the world. No matter what network you have, it is not great. The promise of LTE and 4G didn't really, in my opinion, pan out to be some super extraordinary thing. Like, there are times where my data is great, where I can, browse TikTok and watch YouTube videos without buffer, and then there are also times where my data is like, yep, this is cellular service in 2020, and it's not great. I think we are at a time right now where, Michelle, if you go spend the money on a 5G phone and you go on Verizon or you go on T-Mobile, there's like the OnePlus 7T Pro has a 5G version. I think one of the
how
Samsung
far,
phones-
what's the distribution of 5G right now in even major markets? Let's talk Chicago,
Okay,
New York,
so-
Miami, LA, maybe Houston, maybe
so-
Dallas.
A little bit of technicality here. There's a few different...
I think it's basically bullshit. It's all marketing right now.
For now, yes. For now, of course, companies are going to race to say we have the first 5G network. Verizon is doing a millimeter wave 5G. So 5G, in order to roll out the infrastructure, there needs to be physical boxes, these literally gray boxes.
It doesn't matter who you are. You
planted.
can be Verizon, you can be AT&T, you can be anybody else. You still need the 5G boxes.
There needs to be a lot of infrastructure.
That density of the vicinity of those boxes.
All right, I'll answer your question without spewing too much text.
Yeah, don't make it so tough.
Okay.
Shame on you.
Right now, 5G is, I would say, 75% marketing and 25% practical, where you need to be in a 5G city in order to take advantage.
Close to the transponder.
Yes. Marquez Brownlee, who was a guest on your show a couple of weeks ago, has 2 great videos on his channel about 5G. If you're interested in 5G, go watch his videos. He explains it. You need to have a direct line of sight. You need to be in a city where these boxes are. I would say, Michelle, this is January of 2020. Let's talk again in literally 2022. Let Apple put out I think Apple might do a 5G phone this year, but the networks aren't ready yet.
I have a different take at this from a practical reason. I travel sometimes in a week to 7 cities. The internet is shit everywhere. It really is. And I carry 2 phones with me. Would you pass that blue one on the table there? The reason I carry 2 phones, these are live 2 phones, multiple accounts, is when
Different networks, Kevin?
different networks. Okay. One is AT&T, one is Verizon, because in any city, one of them doesn't work. I know they like to say, oh, they're the best. No, they're not. They don't work. You have to, if you're on the East Coast, you want Verizon. If you're on the West Coast, you want AT&T. In the hills of Hollywood, you got
garbage. Nothing works in the hills of Hollywood.
The point is, between the 2 of them, they have a lot of work to do, and I love both these companies. I don't want to bash them because I know how hard it is. But the internet in America should be like electricity. When you turn it on, it should work. And you should never be, crapped out in it the way I am all over the place. I think, and my hope is, that 5G in the next 5 years will make it ubiquitous, like electricity, so that devices and people can work together and have a consistency that we don't have now. And I'm saying this on the record, the internet sucks.
Mobile internet.
It's shit.
Yeah.
It's absolute shit. I expect so much more. So for both Verizon, AT&T, and all the other players in here, you guys have a lot of work to do because Mr. Wonderful is very unhappy. And I'm not the only one. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Let's take another question here. I love that question. That was great. All right, John, hit us.
Hey, Mr. Wonderful. John from Kentucky. I just wanted to know your opinion on moonlighting a business. If you have a full-time job and a family full of hungry mouths to feed, and say you're in my position and you're the sole breadwinner of your family, I wanted to know your thoughts on any extra profit from your moonlight business. How should you use that? What would you do if you were in my shoes and you just started a moonlit business? Thank you for your time. You have a good day.
Very interesting question. He's basically at a point in his life where he has to feed the kids, pay the rent, make sure the family's okay, and still he wants to be an entrepreneur. What do you think?
Money's got to come from somewhere.
You poo-pooed money earlier in the show. Now you're thinking how tough it is for this guy.
Well, I don't have a wife or kids.
That could happen.
And
generally does.
It generally does. If he's in that position now, he didn't say how old he is.
Sounded to me like he was in his mid-30s.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
So he has a side hustle, as we'll call it, right? That he wants to pursue. That's what he means by this moonlit business?
That's what it is at night. He has no other time. He's got to work all day. Imagine how tired he is. He works all day, has maybe some time with his kids before they go to bed, and then he goes to work again. That's tough.
It's like always a question that a lot of people ask, like, how do you know when to, and I hate to say it, like give up or shift focus or something like that? Because if he's been pursuing this business for 3, 4, 5 years.
He can't. It's too risky to jump at this point.
Okay.
I'm going to give him some advice here because
you know better than I do.
It's just sort of, the reality is you have to take care of your family. Your family is always number one. You got to make sure they're safe and fed and you're providing for them. And that is your role. In this case, you sound like the patriarch of the family. By the way, there's many cases where women have taken over. They're making more than men. And the way it should be is they become the matriarch of the family. I'm cool in either way. I don't care. But the point is somebody has to take on the responsibility. Often it's together, family first. This side hustle, if it starts to work, you should take every dollar you make and retire your debt, get rid of your mortgage. That's a perfect way to set up for the point when you can actually jump ship. Generally, jumping ship in a new business, I'm going to give you a number. It's $3 million in sales. Why is it $3 million? Because most businesses after tax make 10 or 11%. Some make more, but that's the average after tax and all your costs. So you're doing $3 million in sales, you're kind of making $300,000 a year, and you got to be paid for the risk you're taking. Now, maybe you could do it at $2 million, but I like 3. When your business is doing 3 on the side hustle, you jump ship, you quit your job, boom, you spend full time. But that's after you got yourself out of debt. And everybody says, oh, that sounds impossible. Not true. If you really want to make it happen, you're going to bust your ass like this guy is doing, working at night. But if he's got something that's real and sales continue to grow, you can jump off somewhere. I'll give you $2 million or $3 million, but not with nothing in sales, because you don't know if the product is proven yet. I like that question. But I love entrepreneurs that are willing to work basically 25 hours a day. The guy doesn't need sleep. Let's hear from Valerie Gernhauser.
Hey, Mr. Wonderful. 3D printing is here, but so far it's only been used for proof of concepts and models. Do you think this technology is ever going to be used for mainstream manufacturing? And if so, what do you think that will mean for everyday consumers?
Let me set up something before you answer. It's been a huge disappointment for investors. It's been on the market for over a decade. HP went nowhere with it. So many companies have, heralded the advancement of 3D printing. The technology's slow as hell. It's not user-friendly to work with. It hasn't proven itself yet, other than modeling and doing prototypes. What's going on with 3D printing?
I think there's a consumer avenue, and then there's the sort of enterprise avenue for 3D printing, because
Well, give us your take on both.
for me, a consumer avenue of 3D printing is like backing a 3D printer on Kickstarter. Like the MakerBot was a huge, huge success on Kickstarter, and they're still producing them to this day. I think it's a cool, I don't want to call it a toy, but it's like a cool gadget to have in the house. If you're growing up with, young kids, or if you're raising young kids, having a 3D printer in the home can, sort of spark their imagination to create whatever you want.
That's assuming they can connect with the CAD software to actually drive it, right?
Yes, but give the kids some, some benefit of the doubt here. Maybe teach them a thing or two.
I'm just saying, I'm cool with it, but it's very rudimentary compared to what the potential of this technology is.
So I mentioned earlier on the show, we had video games in the house growing up, and my parents kind of just like got us computers and all this tech. I was always around tech. And I think that, that really helped spawn my love for technology from a very young age. And I think if a household has a 3D printer in it, whether it's like printing a little toy that they find on Thingiverse, or they, something breaks and they can fix it.
So you like it as a, I'm not even going to call it a toy, as an implementation of creativity in the family. Yes. So you think it has merit for that. So you endorse a family getting one, has some kids, they explore it on their own.
It's cool. It's a cool thing. How many homes do you go to that have a 3D printer?
Practically none.
Same.
So there must be a reason for that. It must be price, it must be complexity of use.
I think its barrier to entry seems high, right?
In terms of price.
Well, in terms of how do you use it, how do you, what extrusion are you using, where do you get the software from? It seems like a very hard thing to just like, you can't just pick up a book, you can pick up a book and read it. You can't just pick up a 3D printer and print,
For investors, it's been a bust. I mean, it never drove Hewlett-Packard into the stratosphere the way some people thought. Epson, anybody. The printing companies, it never really took off as a mainstream. You think about a color inkjet printer, everybody has one.
That's right. 3D printer use cases are, I would say, maybe we haven't found the proper use cases for a 3D printer.
Or really, it was trying to solve a problem that didn't really exist.
Yes. But then there's also the enterprise route, which there are a couple of companies that are, there's one company in particular, Icon, that is 3D printing cement homes. And so there's that aspect of it
I need to get one of those for my backyard.
There you go. So you can find use for it, right?
The point is that's such a vertical and so expensive to make one that can actually build a wall with windows and holes for electricity.
So I read up on this recently. The Icon house apparently costs $10,000 to build, and whether that's cost of machinery or just cost of goods or whatever it is. There's also another company that's doing aerospace. They want to 3D print rockets. I don't think that they've sent a rocket to outer space yet. I will say, though, there's one company called Gravity Industries. There's a gentleman named Richard Browning who built himself a fully functional jet suit, and they 3D print with metal and a bunch of other materials. They 3D print the sort of suit and the structure. It's jet engines that, I'll send you a link after this. I made a video about it.
So it's incredibly advanced technology for what it does, is what you're saying.
Yes.
But it is not a consumer lit up product yet.
Definitely not.
And all that promise over the last decade just hasn't come to pass.
It's not a TV. It's not a computer where every household has one.
I buy so much tech, but I have never felt the desire to go research 3D printers because I got to have one.
Because you have new use for one.
Yeah, exactly. So I think bottom line is, I don't think it's going to go anywhere except for the verticals you talked about in an extreme case. But it's advanced technology for some industries that use it to become more productive, and that's cool.
I think it's cool.
But it's not going to be a big consumer product. Perhaps it's just too complex to use.
And maybe too expensive.
Listen, it was a fantastic episode of Ask Mr. Wonderful with a great guy. Sam here knows tech. We had a terrific time. And you know what's funny? The questions always come in on a more personal basis, but somehow technology always creeps in. Sam, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Great to be here.
Great to have you. And welcome to my office in New York.
It's a good one.
Take care, everybody. See you next week.